Thank you, Professor Mupidi. We will proceed for the question and answer after we've also heard Professor Saif Shahin. It was indeed an enlightening, enriching session, and I'm sure students have noted down the pointers and they'll be ready with the questions. Dr. Saif Shahin is Assistant Professor of Digital Culture at Tilburg University in the Netherlands. He has a PhD from the University of Texas at Austin and previously taught at Bowling Green State University in Ohio and American University in Washington, D.C. Dr. Shahin's research lies at the intersection of media, technology, and politics. He is especially interested in the role played by digital media in spreading nationalism and social movements. His scholarship has been published in a number of top tier peer reviewed journals, including New Media and Society, Information, Communication and Society, Social Science, Computer Review, American Behavioral Scientist, and Communication Methods and Measures. His research has been awarded by the International Communication Association and Journalism and Mass Communication Quarterly. Dr. Shahin also serves as associate editor of the Journal of Information Technology and Politics and is a member of the editorial board of Journal of Communication Inquiry. He previously worked as a journalist in India, England, Middle East, and the United States, writing on national and international politics. Quite a lot of work, Dr. Shahin. I welcome you to deliver your talk.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me and also for that very kind introduction. It's always a challenge to speak after someone like Dr. Sandeep Mupidi, but I will try and do my best to make this interesting. I'll talk about digital culture. What is digital culture? This is a screenshot I literally took 10 minutes ago this is my WhatsApp conversation with my mom. She sends me these good morning messages every day, and we keep having conversations. Yesterday, she was asking me if I'm getting ready to go to college. She wanted to talk to me, so she asked me, "Are you free ho?" and so forth. So this is digital culture as we experience it in our everyday lives with our family, with our friends, through apps like WhatsApp and social media and so on and so forth, right? So this is the part of digital culture that we are all very, very familiar with, and we are very much immersed in it and experience it on an ongoing basis. What we don't always experience is the larger ramifications of digital culture, and there are many, many, many ramifications of this. Dr. Mupidi touched upon some of the larger issues. What I thought of doing was focus on artificial intelligence. So that is something that we hear a lot about or talk a lot about. I think it was mentioned in the opening remarks as well. But there is often a lot of confusion about what artificial intelligence is, what it means, how it works, and so forth. And so I thought it would be useful to talk a little bit more about that. When we talk about artificial intelligence, we talk about a lot of different things, in fact. And there's a logic by which all of those things are connected. So let's break it down a little bit first. Let's start with something called the Internet of Things. This is, again, a term that is bandied about a lot. What exactly does it mean? It basically refers to physical objects or things that are embedded with sensors, software, and other kinds of technologies. So our phones are an example, but it also refers to home appliances, cars, watches, etc., etc. What's important about them is that they collect and share data with other devices and systems over the internet. So phones, we already know, do that a lot, but these sensors and other software that collect and share data are also being embedded in a lot of other kinds of objects that we use on a regular basis. In 2021, by one estimate, 12.3 billion devices had such sensors on them that were collecting and sharing data. And by one estimate, the number would rise all the way up to 22 billion by 2025. So that's broadly the Internet of Things, the idea that our objects of everyday use are collecting and sharing data over the internet, and a lot of data. Now, that is what leads us to what we call big data. So all of this data that is being collected and shared by the Internet of Things, but also other sources such as social media and so forth, that constitutes what we call big data. Large quantities, large volumes of data, but it is also data that is being produced at very, very fast rates, very, very fast velocity. And big data tends to be described in terms of these three V's. So volume in terms of the amount of data, velocity in terms of the speed at which the data is being produced, and also finally variety. Variety refers to the different kinds of data that are being produced from very different sources and different formats. For instance, text, images, videos, tables, structured data, unstructured data, and so forth. And again, it's always interesting to look at some of these estimates that come up. So by one estimate, 44 zettabytes of data were produced in 2020. And if you're wondering what zettabyte means, one zettabyte has 21 zeros at the end. So that will give you some estimate of the fact that it's just a mind-boggling number. And to put it in perspective, that is 40 times more bytes than stars that we can see in the universe. So we talked about the Internet of Things, which is producing a lot of data, which we call big data. Now, what do we do with all of that data? With so much of data, it is humanly impossible for us to manually study, understand, analyze such data. And that is where machine learning comes into play. So we use machine learning to make sense of big data. Now, there are a lot of different ways in which this happens. Mainly, it's about training machines with examples of data. These examples could be in the form of text, photos, videos, and so forth, to recognize certain patterns. Once the machine starts recognizing those patterns from the examples that it has been fed, it is then able to identify those patterns in other data. So you use some data to train machines to identify patterns, and then once it has learned that, so that's why it's called machine learning, that machine starts learning to identify those patterns, then to recognize patterns, and then after that it can start identifying the same patterns across much larger volumes of data. And it is absolutely essential to use machine learning if we are to do anything with all of those zettabytes of data that are being produced, because as I said, humanly it is no longer possible for us to make sense of all of that data. Now, machines start recognizing and then identifying patterns in data, but they are also able to make predictions based on the patterns that they are identifying. And that is kind of the real value of machine learning. Some examples of machine learning are image recognition systems that we see, like, when you post a photo on Facebook, it will immediately start suggesting name tags for different people in on the photograph, right? So that's what image recognition means, that it can identify those patterns from previous photos and start recommending that you can tag some of your friends or family or whoever is there in the photo. The Internet of Things, big data, machine learning, and now we finally come to artificial intelligence. So when we think about artificial intelligence, that's the sort of workflow, if you will, that we need to think in terms of. So, we start with the Internet of Things, which is devices with sensors and other software that collect and share data. And all of that data then becomes big data, as we talked about. And then we use machine learning to analyze such data. And that is what leads then to the formation of artificial intelligence systems. So basically what these systems do is perform very large and very complex tasks very, very quickly. Now just think about it. We have tens, thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of devices connected through the Internet of Things, which are producing all of these data. And then we are also then able to use machine learning to analyze all of those zettabytes of data in very, very quickly. That is what allows artificial intelligence systems to then perform very large, very complex tasks involving so many different devices, so much amount of data that requires many different kinds of analyses and so forth, and do all of them very, very quickly for particular purposes, particular ends. And this then begins to resemble what we do as human beings. So that is why it is called artificial intelligence, because it simulates human intelligence in machines. It's used to solve problems. It's used to automate tasks. And some examples of artificial intelligence that we are pretty familiar with include robots, Siri or Alexa, depending on what kind of phone we are using, self-driving cars. We're also moving very quickly towards things like smart homes and even smart cities, which are all run by artificial intelligence. So one artificial intelligence system which is able to collect and analyze very large amounts of data from a lot of different devices, that then enables us to have a home which is very smart, that can understand what are the things that we want, when do we want them, and do a lot of those things, automate a lot of those processes for us. And this can then be expanded to entire cities, or at least that's the dream that a lot of technology companies are working towards. Now, a lot of AI also has a lot of applications across different fields of communication. So we can talk a little bit about what some of these applications are. I've broken them down into a few of the areas that I am a little bit more familiar with. So artificial intelligence in journalism. We can use data-driven journalism to identify stories. So you can use systems of artificial intelligence to look through large amounts of data, which can then lead us to identify stories which we won't be able to know about if we are just looking at the data through our own eyes. We can use artificial intelligence to identify fake news, fake images, fake videos, and I guess I don't need to talk too much about how big a problem this is all over the world. We can use AI to offer personalized recommendations of more stories. Again, something that I think all of us would be familiar with. If you go to a news website, depending on what are the stories that you're clicking, you will see recommendations of other stories. This happens also on streaming platforms like Netflix and so forth. If you watch Netflix, then after you watched a few, then the system starts recommending what else you might want to watch based on what you have already been watching. So that's again an application of artificial intelligence. Something relatively new in artificial intelligence in journalism is something called robotic reporting. So that refers to the use of algorithms. And these are not, when we say robotic reporting, these are not literally robots that kind of look like human beings, but basically algorithms that are used to write news reports. So what they do is they collect data from a lot of different sources and then write entire news reports on their own. They tend to be used right now in things like business journalism or even sports journalism for the kinds of reports that actually require a lot of data, like quarterly reports, business reports, and things like that. But their use is growing more broadly as well. Artificial intelligence in broadcasting. Lots of uses. A few examples include automated content production and editing, customer programming preferences. So just as we were saying, just like you can have those recommendations of more stories in journalism, so similarly in broadcasting, artificial intelligence can be used to understand what are the preferences of customers and then direct programming in those direction. Another example is closed captioning that is being done by artificial intelligence now in broadcasting. Advertising and public relations, lots and lots of uses for artificial intelligence here. So companies are using artificial intelligence for social media monitoring. Basically what they do is set up an AI system which monitors all of the references and mentions of that company or its products across social media, be it Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc. And it identifies how people are reacting to the company, to the different products and things like that. So it can do things like sentiment analysis, where it can see whether people are talking in positive terms or negative terms about the company or its products. It can also identify if somebody makes a complaint about a product of the company, which then starts going viral across social media. A lot of people start sharing those complaints and so forth. Then it can also set up an alert where the company would immediately know that this is happening, and then it can intervene quickly as a result of that. It can artificial intelligence systems can identify the right kind of influencers. So I guess everybody is familiar with the idea of influencers. You can use AI systems to identify who would be the best influencers to advertise for your product or sell your product online. You can also set up artificial intelligence for knowledge assistants or chatbots. So, like on the website of your company, you can have a little window where someone can directly interact with a chatbot who would respond to some of the standard questions that they might have about the company or its products. And obviously just doesn't just refer to companies in terms of private enterprises. It can be used for many kinds of organizations. Now, as we talk through all of these wonderful uses of artificial intelligence, we must always remember the many ethical concerns that emerge from artificial intelligence as well. And Dr. Mupidi talked a little bit about it. In fact, my own work mainly deals with these ethical concerns. So, for instance, the loss of jobs that is resulting as we use more and more artificial intelligence to automate a lot of the work that we do. The invasion of privacy and surveillance. Dr. Mupidi again mentioned Shoshana Zuboff's book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. I wholeheartedly recommend that book as well. So it's a very good book that gives us a very good sense of all the different ways in which our data are being monetized and their implications for society, for democracy, and things like that. Data breaches, another big concern. We, when we share our data with certain companies or certain other institutions, they can be breached. That keeps happening all of the time, and that's a big concern. Disinformation, deep fakes, again, something that we are quite familiar with. Artificial intelligence can be used to create bots on social media, which spread disinformation at very fast rates across large swaths of social media. So that can be significantly problematic. And then finally, social and political polarization. The same recommendation systems that allow us to get personalized information from websites, from social media, and so forth. That also means that we are therefore not getting the information that belongs to sort of a different category or a different way of thinking about things and so forth. And that can mean that we are only being fed with one type of information and not information more broadly available. And that can lead to polarization in politics and society and things like that. So these are all concerns that are that anyone who's working in the field of artificial intelligence, people in technology industries and so on and so forth, should be familiar with, should be concerned about. But it is of special and particular concern, I think, to people in the field of communication, be they journalists, be they broadcasters, be they other kinds of media professionals, because these are the kinds of things that even as we learn to use artificial intelligence for journalism or for advertising or broadcasting and so forth, we should also be not just aware of these concerns, but also be pointing out these concerns, especially journalists. And I speak here from my own personal experience as a journalist many years ago. It's important, so much important for journalists to then talk about these kinds of concerns that emerge as a result of artificial intelligence, because unless and until they do that, people around the world in our societies, they will often not be aware of these issues. Moving on, where are we moving on, in fact, right? What does the near future of artificial intelligence look like? One direction in which artificial intelligence is moving is toward what is called emotional intelligence. So this is to not just simulate or mimic how human beings think, which is what artificial intelligence is traditionally about, but also to how human beings feel. and replicate those feelings within machines. So that is the direction in which artificial intelligence is moving toward, with a lot of implications. 5G virtual reality. Virtual reality, I believe everybody is familiar with. 5G refers to the latest industry standard in sort of data sharing, and basically this is what is going to enable virtual reality to become a reality, if you will. One of the reasons why all the virtual reality has been around for quite a long time, it requires very, very, very fast sharing of very large amounts of data, and the data sharing protocols that we have had so far have not been quite as adept at enabling that. And so with 5G systems, I believe that is going to happen. So that's something to keep in mind, that virtual reality would become just like Facebook and other social media sort of started becoming much more prominent after the emergence of 3G in the mid 2000s. So I think a similar change is going to happen. And that also relates to metaverse that Dr. Mukherjee was also talking about. Cyborgs. What are cyborgs? Cyborgs are mix of humans and cybernetics, right? So cyber part refers to cybernetics and org refers to organism. What it basically means is how human beings are increasingly not just wearing technology on us in the form of smartwatches and smartphones and things like that, but also putting technology, Internet of Things related technology inside of us. So like in our hearts, in our bodies, and so on and so forth. And all of these are also part of the Internet of Things. Devices that are being put inside of our bodies, connected to the internet, and used to monitor and so on and so forth. And so on the one hand, we have machines which are becoming more and more like humans, both in terms of artificial and emotional intelligence. And on the other hand, we also have human beings who are increasingly going to be living in virtual reality environments and putting more and more technology in machines connected to the Internet of Things inside of our bodies as well. So this is raising the possibility of what some are calling as post-humanism. So we, potentially moving in an era where we are no longer just humans, but mixtures of human and machine and so forth. And now all of these raise a lot of ethical questions, ethical concerns that we can get into. Lots of books are being written about it, and so on and so forth. Now, how far is this future? Not very far. The future is now. This is really happening as we are speaking. I would also recommend this other book, The Next Billion Users by Payal Arora. She's a very good friend of mine. She also teaches here in the Netherlands. And she argues that the next billion users of the internet will come from India, China, and places outside the West. So when we talk about some of these things in India, it seems like there is this sort of spatial distanciation where we think like, oh, this is all happening in the West. It's not really something that is all that relevant for us in India. And it also seems a little bit too futuristic and so forth. That is not really the case. It is all of these trends are moving very, very quickly to countries like India, China, and even across Africa, across Latin America, and so forth. So this future is not all that far. It is happening as we speak. And so these are all things that we should, first of all, be aware of because they provide many, many opportunities for us. And they are going to change our lives, are already changing our lives in a lot of different ways. But at the same time, as we discussed, also raise a lot of concerns, ethical concerns, political, social concerns that we should be aware of and be talking about, not just among ourselves, but across our societies as communication and media professionals. I'll stop sharing my screen, and thank you all for listening.